but I want people to be full. And as you said, we have to work. So work should be filling us instead of draining us, because if people are full from work, then they go home and they're happy. Full things pour out. Empty things suck.
Like millions of people around the world, we need to work. Some do it for the money, others do it for the recognition. And if you're lucky, you do it because you love it. But finding purpose and passion in your work can be easier said than done, and the path to success can be unpredictable at best. Maybe you love your job, maybe you hate it, or maybe you're just going through the motions. But if you're looking for some inspiration, then I've got one question for you. Are you consuming your career, or is it consuming you? Welcome to Consuming Careers. I think you'd agree that many of us carry baggage through our lives that often impact our work and our relationships. Hi, I'm Bruce Smith, and in this episode of Consuming Careers, we explore the career of Brandon Lee, how he came to terms with the wounds of his youth, and how he's directing that pain into building workplace cultures that produce flourishing businesses and families. So let's join my interview with Brandon. All right, welcome back to Consuming Careers, and we've already got a toast in the air with a little bit of bourbon tonight. So I'm so excited to be able to spend some time with my friend Brandon Lee. Brandon, good evening.
Hey, thank you for having me and for coming to this.
Well, tell me what is this? What is this?
Yeah. So
where are we?
We're in my backyard with my fire pit and my fire pit area. And we've got the lights. We got some little lights.
Strung up lights.
Yeah. And no, my son and I built this because I wanted this type of space. This, for me, is the important stuff of life. When you can sit around and you have a fire in the fire pit, maybe you have a drink, maybe you smoke a cigar, but you have good life conversation.
Yeah, this is a really intimate space. You got, 8 chairs here, 7 or 8 chairs. So it's daylight savings time. So I think the sun went down about 2 o'clock today.
It felt like it.
We were trying to schedule this a little bit earlier, but we're here in the dark, and it's just a beautiful evening with just the cool wind, barely moving. Can hear just the crickets in the background, and it's just a delightful evening. So it's a treat to be able to spend some time with you, Brandon.
I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well, why don't you just kind of briefly tell us, a little bit about you, what you're doing now, kind of what is your line of work, and who are your customers, who do you serve, and how do you serve them?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with my family because I always do that because it is the most important thing in my life. The most important people. They're my favorite people. So Megan and I are actually about next week. We celebrate 25 years.
All right.
And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're hitting that stage where we've been together for half our lives.
Yes.
And more, which is exciting. And we have 5 kids.
Okay.
And they go in age from 24 to 10. And so we have 4 that were pretty back to back. We had 4 that were 5 and under.
Yep.
Not going to lie, we're a little crazy. And then, we thought we were done, and I thought we were done, and my wife and God had other plans. And
okay.
And Zoe came along, and very intentional, very planned.
Yeah.
Make sure we're very clear. No, she's not an accident. And she's awesome.
Yeah.
Rounds
Great.
out. Our life wouldn't be the same without her. Our family wouldn't be the same.
Well, there's a lot to be said for, family as it relates to work, right? Mm-hmm. So peace at home, I think, is an incredible advantage in the workplace. So walk us through what you're doing now.
So I am a co-founder of Fist Bump.
Okay.
And I'm also a founder of Funnel Amplified, 2 technology companies. Both of them play in the social and content space.
Okay.
So Fist Bumps are really exciting. I think I'm like a little giddy schoolboy right now. So Fist Bump is we have created what we call Twinny, which is the ability to twin your brain.
Okay.
using AI. So we're integrated with ChatGPT. And the idea is with AI, like, everyone got really excited with ChatGPT, but then you go in, you're like, okay, write an email for me, it's this. And people go, oh, it's too generic.
Yeah.
And then you got a lot of people out there, well, it's all about the prompts, which is true. It's about the prompts. But it's also about what you feed it, what you tell it to train the model. Is the term they use there, finely tune the model. So what we built for teams and for individuals is a tool that the company can add their content. They could load PDFs, PowerPoints, Word documents, URLs, and it just scrapes, done, and then you can tell it how you want it to think about your company.
Wow.
You can tell it your tone, you can tell it your style, you can tell it who your ideal customers are. You can even put in words, like these are common words and phrases that we use. You really twin your brain.
So it's helping with content creation.
And
what else?
Well, right now it's all around content creation.
Okay.
But what we're doing, what I think is really different than most people. Most AI right now is task oriented, right? There's email companies that go, okay, we've added AI. There's graphic companies, we've added AI. What we want to do with this is I want to provide a twin brain for people that they can take with them throughout life, so that they don't have to keep recreating it. It's something that once they have this built, they can then, as I say, take it with them so we can integrate with their email system. They could integrate with their new job. They can integrate with anything else that they're doing, where it's creating graphics, it's writing letters, it's creating call scripts. It's, everything you know about me, I need to sit down and have a conversation with my child about XYZ. Can you help build an outline for me?
That's
so
great.
It's really leveraging technology, not to replace the human, but to help humans be more efficient. And what I have found through content marketing with all these years and sales all these years, the hardest part is starting.
Yeah.
It's always easier to edit than to create.
Yep.
And so we're creating a twin brain so that you can then edit, but let the brain do kind of the heavy lifting for you.
That's great. Yep.
Yep.
And I suspect if we have the same conversation a year from now, we'll have learned so much more. I mean, we're on warp speed with AI, right?
We are on warp speed with AI.
So much learning, so many new applications for it. I'm trying to figure out how to use it at work, and I get to a point sometimes, you're talking about prompts, you're talking about, emails and whatever, sales, content, and I just kind of sometimes just throw up my hands because I'm trying to figure out how it works, and I haven't figured out how to get it into my normal workflow. Just not there yet. I'm sure that'll come. Tools will come, but we're all trying to kind of catch up. 20's coming. I love it. Okay. Well, we'll get back to that and make sure we talk about that at the end. So I want to make sure people can connect with you if they want to connect on that or any other topic we kind of cover. So let's just back up to the beginning, because I know you've got a full story. So this could be 2 or 3 podcasts, I'm sure, that could go 2 or 3 different directions based on where we start and what path we want to kind of go in your journey. But you've got a very formative early childhood, and I know you had a choice on how you reacted and responded to that for the rest of your life, right? So let's start there. Grew up in California. And I'm going to let you fill in the rest because we've only known each other a few years. We didn't grow up together. So
that's right.
Jump in there.
Yeah, so I grew up in Chino, California, about 40 miles east of Los Angeles. Chino was a great place to grow up in the 70s and 80s. I mean, it was one of those idyllics. I mean, we had cows and we didn't own cows, but Chino was known for dairies and cows, and it was one of those. I mean, it was what we talk about with the 80s a lot. It's, we would do that, get on our bikes in the morning in the summer, and as long as we were home by the time the street lights went on, and we'd find somewhere to eat. Someone's mom would feed us at some point, and we just took off. We rode our bikes. We'd go for miles. We'd dig holes. We'd play in fields. And my life from the outside looking in looked probably really nice. I mean, we were very solid middle class, working families. Both my parents worked. Very just solid middle class.
And you had a lot of jobs in your early teens and like paper routes.
Paper route. Yeah.
Well, you didn't shovel snow. See, I grew up in Maine. I shoveled snow.
Asphalt.
Oh, you shoveled asphalt.
In the Southern California heat.
I'll take the snow any day.
Yeah.
And you had a chocolate company. Tell me just a little bit about the chocolate company.
Yeah, it was, calling it a company is probably pushing it a little too far. But, so my friend Mark Sewell, he's my best friend growing up. He's a great guy. His mom owned a bakery, and she had chocolate making stuff. And I think one day we were probably just bugging her.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know what? Here's the molds. Here's some chocolate. Go make candy.
Yeah. Get out of my hair.
Get out of my hair, right? And so we made like lollipops with different sizes and different types of chocolate. And, she probably thought we were just going to make a few and eat them. And that was the end of it. Well, we made a few and I'm like, let's go sell them.
Sure.
And so we went door to door and we started selling them.
Fantastic.
And then we went back and we made more. And it caught up to us. Jeannie Sewell, she taught me about COGS, cost of goods sold, because in 5th grade, I think it was, I had no concept about the cost of materials. And finally, I think one day she called my mom and she's like, hey, what are the boys doing? And we got in trouble, but she also used it as a learning lesson.
Yeah.
And because we had 100% profit.
Of course you did.
Because of her expense, out of her bakery. And but she taught us that, hey, you gotta pay for the materials, and then you build a price based on the cost of materials, the time you put in, and all that. And so we realized we had to raise our price a lot more, and not as many people bought, and it kind of fizzled out. But it was a great learning experience.
And that was way before the FDA stepped in.
Yeah, her kitchen was clean.
You got some corners.
Her kitchen was clean.
Under the radar. Okay. Okay. So back to kind of your raising, your childhood.
Yeah. So, I know we're going to talk about it. I was very entrepreneurial as a kid. I think it's the way God made me. I think it was the way I'm designed and built. Coordinating soccer tournaments with my friends in the neighborhood in the summer. Rallying the kids to do different things. Like, one day I just came up with this idea. I'm like, hey, let's play bike tag. And they're like, what's bike tag? And I was like, well, it's where we ride our bikes all around town. And instead of tagging somebody, which is dangerous, you have to pass them. And if you pass them, then they're it. And we had like a 2-mile block square. I'm like, you can't leave that. So I had a lot of fun in a lot of ways. And, but what went on behind closed doors in our home wasn't so good.
Yeah.
And it was very chaotic. It was very inconsistent. My dad drank a lot and was abusive. And it created almost two people in me. There was somebody I was when I was away from home. And then there was somebody I was when I was home, and that person was always scared.
So how old are you at this time? So when do you remember that starting until maybe you left for college?
It was my whole, I remember some things from 4, 5, 6 years old that were things that a 4, 5, 6-year-old should never experience or see. All the way up through, leaving for college.
Okay. And we can jump back to that a little later. But so off to Claremont McKenna.
Yes.
Right. What are they? The Spartas?
No, we were the Stags.
The Stags.
Yeah, Claremont Stags.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was an interesting thing. I had no direction. Neither of my parents went to college.
Yeah.
And to their credit, they said, you're going to college.
Yeah.
But that was about all the direction I had.
Okay.
I didn't know to even ask for direction. I had some great people in high school. Like, I had a soccer coach that I thought was the greatest guy in the world.
Yeah.
And if he had told me what happened, that he was leaving our school to go coach at a college, I would have gone there just to go be near him. He was a
Right.
great dad figure for me, but
Yeah.
he didn't tell me because he wanted me to make my own decision. But he also didn't know what else was going on behind the scenes of my family. Like,
Yeah,
I just
sure.
had no direction. So really, Claremont was the best school I got accepted to,
Okay.
but it was 15 minutes from home, and I had no desire to go there. And but it was a really good school. I got to play soccer there. But the reason I chose it is I wanted to go. I don't know why I had this fascination with Seattle and Denver.
Okay.
Don't even know exactly where it came from. Trees, kind of like the environment we're in now. Trees,
Yeah.
outdoor, seasons. In Southern California, we don't have seasons. And I was fascinated with those. And I had some scholarship offers to go to Seattle Pacific and play soccer. But it wasn't a full ride. And my mom basically said, you can go to Claremont, you can go to Azusa Pacific, which was like 25 minutes from home, and I can go to Cal State Fullerton, and we'll pay for it.
Yeah.
But if you go anywhere else, you're on your own. And I just didn't have it in me. I didn't know that I could have said, well, I'll go figure it out.
Yeah, sure.
I could have gone a couple different places. I was a kicker. I had a few people talking to me about that. But I had no direction. I had no encouragement to even
Right.
think beyond.
No mentor.
No.
Yeah.
And, I get it. My mom wanted me close, but it wasn't necessarily the best decision for me. It was the best decision for her.
Did you have any siblings?
I had an older brother,
Yep.
and he went to Azusa Pacific.
Okay.
So I wasn't going to go there.
Yep.
And nothing against him. I didn't want to be a younger brother anymore.
Yeah. Got it. You're charting your own course.
Right.
Okay. So, Claremont, McKenna, and then Texas State.
Yeah. So first in between, I had a couple of job offers after Claremont.
Okay.
And I had no direction again. What did I want to do? And one of them was in a call center, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had a friend who worked in the marketing department at Vail Ski Resort, and he said, "Hey, I can get you a job at Vail."
Wait a minute. Call center or Vail?
Yeah, exactly. And he said, I think I can get you a job in our department. And I said, oh. He goes, but you got to be there. I can't, we don't, we're not going to hire you and then, wait for you to move in. You actually have to be there. And I said, okay. So I had this job offer. I told him I was thinking about it. In the meantime, I booked a hotel room in, what is that? Summit. I forget. Anyway, it's up in the mountains.
Of Colorado.
In Colorado.
Yeah.
I booked a hotel for a week. My parents had a timeshare, and then they didn't use it for a lot of years. So they had all these weeks booked up.
Yeah.
I was able to get like a Holiday Inn for a week for free.
Nice.
And I packed up everything I could fit in my car. And I said, I've got a week to find a job and a place to live, and I'll stay.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, I'll come home and I'll take that job.
Okay. All or nothing.
All or nothing.
Burning the ships.
Well, not
it.
really. I had something to fall back
That's
to,
true.
right?
Okay.
And so I took off, and it's funny. I was just talking to our oldest daughter about it tonight, actually, because she's finished college. She's got a job, and she's been thinking about wanting to move to Tampa and stuff like that. And she's like, I don't know. It's kind of scary. Is it the right thing? I said, well, let me tell you what happened to me. And when I left, I remember pulling out of the driveway, and it was the most freeing, like I was escaping.
Yeah.
And it was the scariest thing all at the same time. And I told her, man, I bawled and I laughed and I hoot and hollered and I bawled. And I probably did that for the first 3 or 4 hours of that drive.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a very defining moment. And I got to Colorado. I got my hotel and did all that, called my buddy. And I'm like, okay, I got to find a job and a place to live. And before the week was over, I had 2 job offers. I had 2 different offers to rent a room.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I'm staying. We'll just see how it goes. And that was Colorado for a year. The only reason I didn't stay longer is because I met a lot of people there in Vail that had master's degrees and PhDs, and they went there for a year to relax and never left.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I don't leave, I'm never leaving. And so then I went to graduate school, and that's when I went to Texas State down in Austin.
Well, I love the self-imposed urgency. You know, it's like, we're going, and you've got a short fuse to make something happen. I love that.
Yeah.
That's just I don't think there's a better motivator for action than, you've got to do something, and you can count the hours that you've got to make that call. So that's fantastic.
And it kind of became a consistent thing in my life. When I moved to Texas, I was like, I didn't know anyone in Texas. I'd never been to Texas. I hadn't even visited the school.
Yeah.
But it was the right program I wanted, and they offered me in-state tuition as a TA, and I could afford it. My options were San Diego State, which I didn't want to go back to California, Texas State or Syracuse, and I didn't want to go freeze my butt off in Syracuse.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And I packed up my car, and I was driving down there going, what am I doing?
That really brings an incredible amount of focus, right? There isn't a whole lot of noise in your mind when you make that kind of decision. Like, we're going 100 miles an hour at this goal, and either we succeed, or look, there might be a fallback position, but it's going to be painful.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I also think it takes a certain kind of personality to embrace that, and not everybody lives quite that level of abandonment, I think.
Yeah, and I think as much as I want to say, hey, I was strong and it was abandonment, and it was also I would say it was a bit of a manifestation of my brokenness, that I had to do big things to prove I wasn't a piece of crap. Can I cuss on your show?
You can. I'll just have to edit it out.
Oh, okay. I won't then. But that was the, when I look back on it, as I got older and started dealing with some of my childhood stuff, I had to strive and succeed and be different. And I needed a bit of that, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing that. Yeah. Like I didn't realize it at the time, but when I look back on it, that was important to me, because I did feel so broken and wrong, and like I didn't belong anywhere. And that was the way I was going to try and belong. So I did, and I did it again when I finished grad school. I wanted to be fluent in Spanish.
Okay. And
so I went to Mexico for a 6-week language course. Again, I had a job offer, and I said, well, I was going to 6 weeks. I said, great, fine, you're going to learn a language, we'll wait. And then when I was down there, I met the owner of the institute that I was studying at, and I lived with the family who didn't speak English. It was like this total immersive thing. And he took me to a soccer game. No one else wanted to go, so it was just he and I. We got to know each other, and he said, I need somebody to teach English to my Spanish teachers. Would you want to stay? And I said, well, you going to pay me? He's like, well, I can't pay you much, but and I'll give you free Spanish classes. I said, all right. And so I ended up staying 9 months.
That's great.
And became fluent in Spanish and did some traveling. And I mean, I was in a small, awesome town. Like, it's called Guanajuato, Mexico. If anyone's listening, it's like a little bit of Spain in the mountains of Mexico.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing.
Sounds amazing. Yeah.
But I kind of had this, I look back on it now and I see all this stuff, and it was great. It was cool. I had great experiences. But what was driving me wasn't the right thing.
Yeah. Well, look, what were you, 22, 23 at the time? Still, I mean,
your brain is still kind of mush, right? You're just kind of going on emotion and adrenaline and,
Fair
and testosterone.
enough.
So, we can intellectualize this stuff from here, but I hear you.
Yeah, and I did have a sense though, and I don't even remember where I heard it, but I remember someone saying, there's a certain point in your life where a lot of options go away.
Yeah.
You get married, you have a mortgage, you have this, you have that, those things go away. And, I've always had an adventurous spirit though. I mean, I was very, very fortunate at 10 years old to go to Europe and play soccer.
That's amazing.
In 1980, nobody even knew what soccer was, right?
I was in Ohio, and I'm like, what is soccer? Only like the German families that came over because their dad got a job. It's like they're the only ones who know anything about it. Right?
And that's how we learned about soccer. Well, my brother learned about soccer from school, I think, and we played AYSO. But then we met another family, and the dad was German. And he's like, we should take the boys to play in here. And we went and we played in tournaments in Germany and Sweden and Switzerland and Denmark. And, it was a totally different time, but some of those experiences have been a big, big influence in shaping me.
Yeah.
So at 10 years old, we fly to Europe to play soccer, and we're staying with host families. And I'm looking at like, our Zoe's 10 years old. And I'm thinking, I would go off with these families who I never met, who didn't speak English.
Right.
And I'd go stay at their house for 3, 4, 5 nights while we're in country playing tournaments.
Yeah.
And you just did it because that's what was in front of us.
That's right. So let's move forward a little bit in your career. So out of college, first job, kind of what did that look like? Because you didn't start off as an entrepreneur.
Mm-mm.
So what were some of those first experiences?
So I had a job in sales.
Yeah.
My first job out of grad school. Again, I took a very different path. I went to grad school thinking I was going to do management consulting work. I wanted to go work for like a BCG or something. And I spoke Spanish, and maybe I could go in South America and spend my career there. Well, in college, in grad school, I met this guy. And I started working for him. He was a Pakistani guy whose family owned a plant in Pakistan, and he had hand-stitched soccer balls.
Okay.
And he said, I need someone that knows American soccer. And so I put myself through grad school selling soccer balls for this guy. They were great soccer balls, but nobody knew the brand. And he would put me on a plane and send me to Seattle, to Denver, to Kentucky, to wherever, and I'd do these youth soccer conventions, and I'd sell soccer balls in bulk to youth clubs. And because of that, I met all these people in the sports industry.
Yeah.
So through that, I got offered this job, and it was in sales. It was back in California. And the company was called Aminco, and they did lapel pins and dog chains and like all the branded trinkets and trash type of stuff.
Okay.
And I was a sales guy, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And they just said, like, here's your territory, here's your database. Like the old days, here's your desk, here's a phone, pick up the phone. And
phone book, yeah.
And I just started calling people and like, hey, this is what we do. I'm going to be in town next week. Can I come see you? And my clients were like all the professional sports teams and the major colleges and even some retailers. And we helped create these. My goal was to sell product, but the way that we did it was by creating these marketing campaigns for them. So, things like in stadium, they give away things in the stadium. So it's like lapel pin night, and they've got 8 lapel pins, and there was a case. And if you go to those 8 games and you get the 8 lapel pins, you got the thing and all that.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I put those together and traveled Monday through Thursday. I lived in Newport Beach with a buddy of mine right on the beach. Like it was a really great thing. But
good.
I traveled a lot. And but I went sideways with my boss. And it had a lot to do with just the junk that I carried.
Okay.
And I kind of walked myself out of that job. And then I looked up and like, well, what am I going to do? And I met these 2 guys, and they were starting a startup, and I'm like, I'm in. And so I went right into my first startup.
And which one was that? What was that called?
When we started it was called Animal Avenue.
Okay.
And it was basically like Chewy.
Yeah.
But we started it in 1997.
Okay, so
we failed miserably.
So they hadn't invented the internet yet, but you were an online business.
No. So we had the internet, and we put an entire pet store online. I mean, remember the Pets.com and the Sock Puck? But
absolutely.
they were much bigger than we were. They got a lot more funding than we were, but they ended up the same way we did. We all failed.
Yeah.
And but what we did, which I thought was really smart, was we went and started talking to pet owners.
Okay.
To veterinarians.
Yep.
And we said, how can we partner with you? And what came out of it was we created Healthy Pet Magazine.
Okay.
And the veterinarians, they lived off of sending out their reminder notices. Remember back in the postcard days?
Sure.
They would send out these postcards and say, hey, Bruce, it's Sparky's due for a shot. Call us to schedule an appointment. And their revenue just kind of went up and down based on that. And it was a challenge for them because it was a task that nobody wanted to do, but it was also the lifeblood of their revenue. And so we looked at that and said, well, what if we create a magazine called Healthy Pet, and then we'll take your reminder information, your data, and we'll print it on a postcard and stick it on top of the magazine, glue it to the magazine, and then we mail them the magazine. They'll see your reminder notice, but in the magazine they'll have ads to go to animalavenue.com and purchase your product. It didn't work with Animal Avenue, but what did work was the magazine reminder program.
Interesting.
And the entrepreneur, honestly, I don't think we knew what we were doing, but I was tasked. I was the junior guy, and they were like, we need to go find writers. Okay. So we started finding writers. Yeah. And we got to put together a magazine. So we figured out how to put together a magazine. And we got to find printers. So I called printers. Hey, this is what we're doing. We know what we're doing. We need help. And then this is when I got into technology too, because we were teaching people then how to log into AOL, export their reminder data, and then email it to us in a file.
Wow.
And a lot of them would like, we don't get it. We're just going to FedEx it to you. So they were FedExing 3.5-inch floppies. And we had to, hire like high school kids that would come out after school, and we did data entry. And we got all the, the database information in there. But we created a program where we were, we ended up, I went out and learned how to partner with all these tech companies. And there were a lot of like mom and pop tech companies that built the software and sold it to veterinary clinics within like a 50-mile radius of their home.
Okay.
And, we built like a $2 million company.
That's great.
And a publicly traded company came along and wanted to buy it. And I didn't really have a say. I owned such a small portion of the business. But we sold it. And then we worked for a big company. Mm-hmm. And long story.
So you stayed on.
I stayed on. We all stayed on. And next thing you know, I'm the president of this company.
Wow.
Reporting directly to a CEO of a publicly traded company. And again, had no idea what I'm doing.
How big is this company?
We were about 2 million.
2 million publicly traded. Okay.
No. They were we were a subsidiary of this publicly traded company. Yeah. And I'm running this $2 million business for them.
Okay,
and then they had several other businesses and things going on. But I got to watch the C-suite from this company and realized I have no idea what I'm doing.
So did that energize you, or did that just overwhelm you? Like, I need to find my people, my home, someplace where I'm more, can be more competitive.
I don't know if I thought about it enough like that, but I was so intimidated that it was a combination. I had an idea for another company that I wanted to go do, which I eventually did. But I also was so intimidated. I didn't feel like I belonged. And that was kind of a recurring theme in my life, that I never really knew where I belonged. And so I just went and did my own thing. And like, go to Mexico for 9 months, it just seemed like the right thing for me to do. So I did it. And I didn't have any other voices in my life telling me differently. So I had an opportunity then, and I look back on that and go, man, I had a really good opportunity to learn from some really smart people in a solid company and grow within the company. But I was too intimidated. I didn't even know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
And part of it too was, growing up in the 80s and 90s, we, fake it till you make it was a big thing.
That's right.
You didn't show weakness. You had to be like, I know what I'm doing. And I knew I didn't know what I was doing.
And it takes a lot of professional maturity to ask for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't have that.
So you were looking for an escape, for a way out.
And it was both. I mean, I had an idea for a new company that I wanted to do, based on what we learned at Healthy Pet. I mean, I love the magazine idea, and this is in like 99 and 2000 when like the Learning Channel was coming, and like the house flipping shows were coming. What was that show? Trading Spaces was a big thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at that going, well, what if we did, instead of a pet magazine, what if we did a home and decor magazine? And we sold it to realtors.
Okay.
And lawyers and chiropractors, because I literally saw my wife had magazines and stacks of them on the end tables in our living room, and if I ever went to go throw one out, I would get in trouble. And I'm like, but this is like 9 months old.
That's right.
And she'd be like, but there's like a dog-eared spot of a page.
That's
it goes,
right.
I like this bed, and I like this bed cover, and all these things. And I'm like, that is the marketer in me. I'm like, that is some longevity in our house. And I thought, well, what if that magazine was sent to them by a realtor or by a chiropractor or because most direct mail then, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Comes in your mailbox and you go junk,
right.
bill, junk.
Right.
And we threw stuff away.
Sure.
So
we still do.
We still do.
Absolutely.
But the magazine, it was a gift, not a direct mail piece. And so that's what we did. And so part of it was I was scared.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I belonged. They were like real people.
Sure.
Right? Publicly traded company.
Yeah.
Big houses in LA.
So this is something that you could control, right? You could own, control, and I don't know. I don't want to say. Well, what comes to mind is, you can be the smartest guy in the room. Right?
Yes. I could do things my way.
Right. Which, as we know, has its benefits and it has its pitfalls, right?
Right.
And blind spots. Okay. So is this, what was it called? Design Publication?
By Design Publishing.
By Design Publishing. Yep. Okay. So you launched that.
I launched that.
2000? Year 2000?
2001.
Okay. All right. How did that go?
It went well. I mean, it was a very successful company.
Did you fund it yourself? Did you get some money from the outside? What?
My wife and I took a line of credit on our home.
Okay, so married. Okay.
We're married.
Yep.
We had, this was one. So we were married.
When were you married?
We were married in 98.
98, so 3 years into your marriage.
So here's this again, where we met in November of 97.
Yep.
We got married 1 year and 1 week later in 98,
okay.
November 15th.
Yep.
And then a year and 1 week later on November 24th, Maddie was born. Yep.
November 24th of 99.
99.
And then you decide to quit your job and start a company.
Yeah.
And mortgage your house.
And mortgage our house.
Okay, so a little bit of stress
in
the Lee household.
Well, and we already had Kate by then.
Yeah.
And Megan was 6 months pregnant with Abby, and we packed up and moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
I can tell already you married way above your pay grade, my friend.
I know. I don't think she realized what she was getting into. But so we took out a $150,000 line of credit on our home, and I believe we raised about $175 from friends and family.
Okay.
We rented a house in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
We moved up to Coeur d'Alene. We get there. It was over
No, I'm sorry, Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Idaho.
Yeah, Idaho. Beautiful place. It was Labor Day weekend. We get moved into this rental house, basement for my office. Tuesday morning, I wake up at like 4:30 in the morning because at 5 a.m. I could start calling the East Coast, 8 a.m. And I got down in the basement and I went, what in the world am I doing? Like, we have 2 kids. She's 6 months pregnant. We moved into a city we know nobody. And I got this dream and I went, pick up the phone. Like, you got to make this work.
Yeah.
And so I started picking up the phone and I just called and called and called and called and called. And we, 9 months later, Abby was born. We did over $1 million in revenue. I had 5 people on the team and we just kept going.
Yeah.
And, we were doing a lot of millions in 5 years, and somebody wanted to buy it, and I didn't have the wherewithal. I didn't realize yet how much I needed a coach and people in my life. I was still scared of what anyone was going to say. And so I just kind of did what I thought was best, and we sold it. And we made a lot of money, but I sold my team. I lost it, like everything we built. And I loved my culture and my team, and I just didn't think it through.
Okay, so, but you did. So, because you made a decision to sell it.
I did.
So what was that, what was that process? Was it, hey, we could really cash out. This could be our, our retirement. Or maybe you were just overwhelmed with, I've had enough of this 24/7 work life, or just too much stress at home. Like, what was going through your head when you made that decision?
Honestly, I don't think I thought it through very well at all. It was more like, I guess is the next thing I'm supposed to do. Like, people build companies and sell them.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, because, we built Healthy Pet and someone came along and wanted to buy it and we sold it. So now I'm doing it on my own and somebody wants to buy it. And I did say no to him a couple times. And then the number got up to a point and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like life-changing money.
Sure.
I think that was it. I didn't think through it well enough, but the money was enticing. And it felt like what I was supposed to do. And I'm, at this point, I realize I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a starter. Like, okay, well, we'll sell it and go start another one.
So you didn't have a vision of being that CEO that, kind of in that big publicly traded company for a long time, kind of managing subsidiaries. That wasn't your thing.
That's still, and I knew that wasn't me.
Yeah.
But I think, that company, we could have grown it more. And it probably could have been a company I kept forever. Yeah. It was never going to be $1 billion company that I know of. But I hate to say, I wish, but in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have kept it and grew out of that company, because I had income. Yeah. I had revenue. I had people that I trusted. I had systems that worked. Right. I could have kept creating new products or services or companies out of it. Yeah. And in hindsight, that's what I wish I would have done.
Well, you don't know, right? No. So,
the recession hit.
Sure.
Right after I sold. The month that they owned it, the first month they owned it was the first month it didn't grow.
Wow.
And it went from, a lot to not a lot.
Yeah.
And it was a bad purchase for them because of timing.
So, you sold the company. Mm-hmm. What was the next chapter?
The next chapter is where life imploded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
I think it was a combination of a couple of situations that I'm not going to detail, but it was also, I look back and through reading books and therapy and things, I was able to breathe, right? I was able to just go, we had plenty of money. I didn't own a company. I looked up and said, okay, well, Lord, what should I do with the rest of my life? And it was like my subconscious said, oh, we've got time now. So let's just go pull all this stuff up that we shoved away for all those years in childhood and bring it up. And I started dealing with all this fear. And it was like I was that scared 5-year-old, except I was 38 years old, married with 4 kids.
So how did that play out?
It was ugly.
Yeah.
Because once we sold the companies, we're like, what are we doing? So we moved back to California to be near family, my wife's mom. And I thought, okay, this is good. Let's get back. Let's be near family. Let's let our kids have family. And it was ugly. When there's a book that helped make a lot of sense for me. It's called The Body Knows the Score. The body keeps the score.
Okay.
The body knows the score. Now I forget.
Okay.
But it says basically what I went through was pretty textbook. Shoved everything down and fought through life. And for me, it became entrepreneurial success. But once I was able to just take a breath and I didn't have anything on my plate, I didn't have a business to grow, I didn't have people to manage, I had plenty of money in the bank, and I was kind of like, okay, cool, we get to raise our kids, and what are we going to do? And, maybe I'll be a consultant or whatever. And it was like all of this came up, and it was the emotion of who I was as a child just burst to the surface. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. Everything scared me. And I didn't know what to do because it wasn't who I was before.
So that's maybe you can comment on this. So that's a interesting dichotomy because I believe, and I think you'd agree, that we were created to work. We were created to create and to flourish and to build and to grow things, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say that was almost a distraction for you while you were flourishing at work and creativity. It was masking a lot of what was going on deep inside, which is not a healthy balance.
Right. So
how would you, if you had to do it again, how would you address that? How would you balance that if there's a way to balance that? I mean, because a lot of that's out of your control, right? So you've got to.
What's timely. When I sold the company, I sold it to a private equity group out of New York, but they put it into one of their portfolio companies that was based here in Lawrenceville, Georgia.
Wow.
And we were in Idaho.
Yep.
So I have a client who has an office in Lawrenceville that's like 2 doors down from the building of the company that bought my company. And I just drove past there yesterday, and I looked at the building, and I thought, God, I wish I could go talk to Brandon, who walked into that building the first time after he sold it, and tell him, you gotta work on the brain. You gotta work on the thinking.
Yeah.
Because, I just, in giving myself grace, I didn't know to work on it. I didn't think about working on it. Even when I went in therapy, when I was 24, 25, I'm like, oh, I got to go work on stuff. And after 6 months, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I got it.
Listen, would you have listened to yourself? Of course not. So
Well, that's what I was laughing at, because I'm having this conversation in my head going, gosh, I
Right.
wish, like, how would I be able to have convinced myself back then to listen to myself now?
no,
And, yeah.
you just have to kind of walk through it.
But it's a fun fantasy.
It is. It is. Everything would have been just so much smoother. But generals aren't made, in the office,
Right.
and they're made on the battlefield, right? So, if it wasn't for that experience, you wouldn't be the man you are today,
No.
right? You wouldn't be the father. You wouldn't be the entrepreneur. You wouldn't be the leader that you are today.
Right. My only regret, if I do, is I wish I could have worked through it faster.
Yeah, yeah. Look, we're not condoning any of that, right? So,
Right.
but that's the way life is.
Yeah.
And how we engage it, how we relate to it, that's where life happens.
Yeah. And and even now, like my coach now, he's got me on a focus right now of, he's like, man, brother, you need to figure out still how to love yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got me doing those. I feel like Stuart Smalley. Remember him from Saturday Night
I do.
Live? Yeah. and I was telling my wife about it, and she looked at me. She goes, "Well, it's about time." She's like, she loves me for who I am. She's loved me through lots of money. She's loved me through losing money, and she's steady. And I think her greatest wish, and I'm getting there. Like, praise God, I'm getting there. It's taken me a while. It's just to be good with myself and to appreciate myself. And you know what? I'm a good husband.
Yeah.
I've been a good husband because I saw what a bad husband was. And I've worked really, really hard. In the midst of all this striving and all this other stuff, man, I would go home and I was different. I mean, I had stuff. I had rough around the edges stuff I had to deal with. I'm not trying to pretend I was perfect by any means, but I was very intentional.
Intentional. Yeah, that's
about
the word.
who I was as a husband, who I was as a dad, pouring into them. But it also, I realized, it became a testimony.
I had a boss years ago, his name, Bob Fisher, and he would say, listen, Bruce, we're not saving lives here, right? So we were CPAs. We're not saving lives here. Take care of your family. All this will be here when you get back. Clients will be here. All the work's going to be here. So see when you get back.
Yeah.
So how long was it before you went and started your next company?
Well, interesting. So I had 3 pretty successful, 1 really successful, 2 pretty successful exits. And I thought, and then, I went through this life crushing, all this stuff, but I had to pick myself up and go start a company, and it failed.
Okay.
And then I picked myself back up and started another company, and it failed.
Okay.
And
Great.
I was like, what happened to me? And, part of that rules, like good rules, I'm a very systematic thinker. And I think, like most of us, some of our greatest strengths could also be our greatest weaknesses.
Sure.
And so I'm very systematic in my thinking, and I build systems in my companies. But then I started systematically looking at, what am I doing wrong? And I just started overthinking. But I went down a path. I was doing some consulting, and honestly, I wasn't very good at it because I'm a builder.
Yep.
And it was someone else's company, and I didn't have control to go build what I wanted to build, and I'd end up just frustrating them, and they'd frustrate me, and then I'd be out of a client, and then I was going through this, and then I went down and I started coaching, and I wasn't very good at coaching either. I mean, I was a good encourager.
Yeah.
Encouragement's really important to me, but I didn't have a way of, like, how do I take what's in me and impart it to them? And I didn't know how to do that. And then, I've got licenses as coaches and this and that, but I honestly just haven't been that good at it.
But it's different being a coach where I would say you have a less of a vested interest, right, in the success of your client than if you're the CEO and you're building a team where everybody's kind of going the same direction and you all have vested interests in the success.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different. And you were successful building companies and bringing people along with you.
Yeah.
But from a one-to-one consulting, maybe not.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of my rough childhood was that I'm very empathetic, and I'm very aware of helping people be the best version of themselves. And that was just, I think it just kind of evolved and was very natural for me. So one of the things that hurt me with consulting, I believe, is I put a lot of emphasis on the people, on the team.
Okay.
And a lot of CEOs I worked with didn't resonate with them. And I don't know if it's ego, it's, I always say, like, a lot of CEOs, the company's going to get as big as they can keep their hands because they need control.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I learned it, but I realized that if I want this thing to grow bigger, I can't be in control. But the best thing that I can do is empower my key people. Good to Great had a big influence on me. And from lots of things in Good to Great, but the main one was I realized, okay, my job is to decide who's on the bus.
Right.
And then my job is to help people get put into the right seats. And in By Design, at about 2-year mark, we were doing about $4.5 million in revenue, growing, hiring new people every month. And I didn't really love my job because I was being a traditional CEO. It was like, this is what I'm supposed to do as the CEO.
Yeah.
And I had a coach. That was the first time I had a coach, and he put me through this tool called the Simmons Survey. And what I really loved about it is it told you your tendencies. What are activities that you tend towards, and what are activities you tend to avoid? And when I looked at that, what came to me was, well, I need to restructure my job. And that's when I created the term sweet spot. I wanted to put myself in a role where 80% or more of my daily activities were energy gaining to me. They were activities that I tended towards. I called them energy gainers.
Sure.
And 20% or less would be energy drainers. And so I looked at, I got in a room with my coach and a whiteboard, and I said, okay, what are all the things that the company needs to do? And then I wrote my job description.
Like, what are your energy gainers?
Sales, marketing,
Okay.
Coaching people on my team.
Creativity.
Yep. Encouragement.
Problem solving.
And innovation.
Innovation. Okay.
Right.
All right. Drainers.
P&Ls, talking to lawyers, reading contracts, doing the same thing every day.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Got it.
And so I rewrote my job description, and then I looked and said, well, these are all the other things the company needs. And I looked at my team, and I started putting them through the Simmons Survey. And I said, we're going to take a look at your energy drainers and your energy gainers. And so I started at the top and worked my way down. And I said, I want everybody in this company, the best that we can, to be in a job that's 80% or more energy gainers than energy drainers. And if they're in the wrong job, but they belong in our company, we're going to go find where they belong.
That's good.
And my thinking was, and it paid off, was if you have a lot of people who are full, like these vessels of our bodies, they're not meant to be empty, but many of us are.
I would agree.
And when we're empty, we look for the wrong things to fill us, right? Drink, hobby, porn, whatever.
Sure.
Right? We try to fill ourselves in some other way. And I was like, if I can help, and this goes back to kind of my purpose, and I know we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I want people to be full. And as you said, we have to work.
That's right.
So work should be filling us instead of draining us, because if people are full from work, then they go home and they're happy. Full things pour out. Empty things suck.
That's great.
Empty things suck in. And so,
okay, so when were you doing this sweet spot kind of?
Started in 2004, 2005.
Okay, so this is after the publishing company.
No, this is in the middle of the publishing company.
Okay, great. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And that's then the company went from like $4 or $5 million to 18 million.
So what happened, and I'm going to just shift a little bit here. You started 2 more companies that didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, and we talked a little bit about this before we jumped on the podcast, around the topic of grit versus quit.
Yeah.
And just kind of go through what was the grit versus quit conversation in your mind when you addressed the first one, and it sounds like, you could either grit through it and maybe spend a lot more money, or you had to pull the plug.
Mm-hmm.
And then entering your next failed entrepreneurial endeavor,
mm-hmm.
which makes it even harder, right? To kind of churn through that. Okay.
Right.
And then you did it again. So those 2 experiences, just tell me what you were thinking, feeling through that grit versus quit,
Yeah. Grit and quit was honestly a daily battle, sometimes a minute by minute, hour by hour battle for a while.
Yeah.
Looked for jobs, interviewed, had a couple of people tell me, Brandon, I just want to be honest with you, like we're not going to hire you because you're an entrepreneur. You'll be here 12 to 18 months and you'll leave.
Sure.
And I did the whole, no, I'm done with that. And I believed in my heart I was, like,
right.
I wanted to be, like, hey, I just want to calm my life down. I don't want to be a starter anymore. I don't, but I couldn't get hired. So then, the grit or quit was, I had no option. Like, I can't get hired in a job.
Yeah.
I could go work at Costco or something, but that's not going to be fulfilling. It's not going to cover the bills.
Yeah.
So, figure it out.
Yeah, listen, nobody wants to hire a CEO into a line job, right? So if they see that on your resume, look,
why not? We're good.
Yeah, you're good at being a CEO of yourself and your own company, but I need you to follow direction, whether you like it or not.
That's totally fair.
It is, absolutely. So, okay, so let's move into your kind of your most recent. Now we're at Fist Bump.
Yeah.
What was tell me the story of how that started.
So, Funnel Amplified is a social amplification tool.
Yep.
Really cool, simple. One person creates a social post, and they provide it for everybody on the team. It doesn't publish for them. So we had a mobile app, and they get a notification that says, hey, Larry from your team created the social post, and it was green button, you could publish it, blue button, you edit it, and red button, you reject it.
Okay.
And we sold it to marketers.
That's great.
The challenge with it, though, was that the marketer would write it, and then like salespeople or other people would get it, and they go, I don't like that, and they'd reject it. Or they would just go, oh yeah, fine, publish. And then everybody had the exact same post. And my intention of it was the marketer would get it started. It comes to you and you hit the blue button and you edit it and put it in your own words. That way you have your own unique post, but it didn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to help. And so I started, and this is why I discovered that, hey, LinkedIn's more than just a resume place. It's truly a social network, and at the epitome of it, it's networking. And so I started learning it, and then I started coaching it, and working with salespeople to say, this is how we use LinkedIn to build a personal brand, to network in order to sell, but not just straight social selling. That's a whole nother conversation.
Sure.
So Fist Bump came about because what I realized is the tools or the tactics and the activities that salespeople needed to do, it wasn't just post content. You get so much more personal brand building when you comment. Because if I post something and I get 300 views and 2 comments, well, maybe 300 people saw it, but a view is like they scrolled past it. So,
right.
And you got 2 comments, like nobody really saw what you shared. And looking at sales, sales is more about listening than talking. And a post is talking. commenting for me is the digital form of active listening.
Yeah.
And so we were doing a lot. I was teaching people how to comment. How do you comment? And you're sharing your expertise. You can share your know-how and comment. More people see it, da-da-da-da-da. But there were no tools out there to help salespeople comment.
Sure.
And not with a strategy. And so I was like, well, what do I need to do? And I built spreadsheets. And I would put in columns of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'd put in people's link to their LinkedIn profile on the days. And then on Monday, I would go and comment on all those people. And on Tuesday, and then I would write notes like, what did I comment? And how many times did I comment? When should I send them a message? But I had this big, massive spreadsheet. And I went to Daniel, my partner, who's a great developer, and I said, we need to build a tool. And so that's where fist bump happened. And fist bump is, I love the fist bump emoji.
Yeah, yeah.
And
you hit me with that today, by the way.
You know what? I do it all the time. And that's where it happened. Like, we were going through this branding exercise, like, okay, what are we going to name this company? And Daniel actually goes, why are we doing this? Like, why don't we just call it Fist Bump? Because...
So did you get the domain, Fist Bump? Come on.
We did not.
Oh,
well, don't tell anybody. So a squatter owns it.
Okay.
And they wanted $5,000 for it. And we're like, let's see how it's going.
Yeah.
So we have getfistbumps.com.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And we also have some AI. So that's where Fist Bump started, but it quickly evolved. So Fist Bump is designed, it's workflows.
Yeah.
So you could say, I've got these people, you go their LinkedIn profile and you say, put them into this list or workflow.
Yep.
And that workflow's got a schedule. You're going to get a task to comment on their activity twice a month.
Yeah.
And so every day you log into LinkedIn, you hit your fist bump button. It says, hey, you've got 18 tasks to do today. You go start, and it takes you to the first person's most recent post activity, and it says the task you're supposed to do. You comment today, or you send them a message today, or whatever the right task is. And when you do it, fist bump captures what you did. So if you commented, it'll capture the comment. It captures the link that it's on, puts it into fist bump. And then you go to the next task, and then fist bump pushes it into CRM so you can document and show your boss.
Yeah. I'm
doing outreach. It's just not a call. It's not an email. It's a social comment.
That's awesome. So that I would say that I'm in sales. No one that I know in my industry that I see on LinkedIn is doing anything like that.
Right.
I would say, maybe 5% are kind of doing it organically if it pops up on their, they happen to be looking at LinkedIn at the time.
Well,
or if they're not doing that, they're just, what do you call that?
Pitch slapping?
Pitch slapping. That's right. They're talking, not listening.
Right.
So
they're sending cold messages to people in LinkedIn like it's an email.
That's right. That's right.
And commenting is that digital form of active listening.
Yeah, I love that concept. All right, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about. There is a theme through your career that I want to try to quantify, and I think it's around the concept around passion and purpose, but I haven't put a label on it yet, and I want to.
Okay.
Because I want to understand what it is that kind of drove you through. What's that thread that drove you through all of those endeavors?
I can tell you.
I want to hear it.
So, when I was a kid, my dad was a small business owner, and again, without going into detail, because I want to. As tough as my childhood was, my dad's childhood was worse. So
fair enough.
I have a lot of grace for him in the midst of a lot of frustration with him as well, with the way I was raised.
And I would say that's a common story.
Right.
In varying degrees for many, many people.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, from as long as I could remember, and all hell would break loose in the house and chaos, a lot of times I'd hide under my bed. And I had this thought as a kid, and it was very Pollyanna. But I used to think, if I could help him, like, make a little bit more money and take some of that stress off his plate,
Yeah.
maybe he wouldn't be so angry.
Okay.
And in the first company, Healthy Pet, one night, it's like 7:30 at night in California, the phone rings. Back when we had phones that had a cord in the wall and all that, right? I answer it. And a client of ours, he said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you answered the phone." It was 10:30 at night for him in New York. He was in upstate New York. And I helped him with what he needed help with. And he said something along the lines of, "Hey, I want you guys to know I'm really grateful for what you do." And he said something, what I heard and what he said were probably different, but he said something along the lines of, you're taking a lot of work off my plate and you're making my revenue be more consistent. And even my wife commented the other day that I'm calmer at home.
Yeah.
And it was this ding, 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 ding. Like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, that's what I thought about when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was around that time I made my personal mission statement was that I am going to build companies in order to grow people internally, to help customers take stress off their plate and help them make more money with the hope that they can go home and be a better spouse, a better parent. And my goal was to remove chaos from families' lives. And I know that's very Pollyanna, but that's driven me now for 20 some years.
That is profound, I would say, Brandon. I'm not sure I've got a comment to that. Has that been your purpose through pretty much your whole career?
Yes.
Your driving
Even when I didn't know it, it was. But that phone call with that guy was that ding, ding, ding. And it was like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that purpose fueled your passion.
Yes.
Because sometimes I see passion come first. And there's no right answer to this, but and it may have been a little cloudy when you were younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, it was confirmed when you saw the results of your work. You heard stories of,
mm-hmm.
hey, my family's doing great, or I've really got the bandwidth to do things with my family, and the stress level is low. I mean, there's so many benefits to that. Yeah.
And even where I saw it is internally in my company with team members. When we did this energy gaining, energy draining exercise and hey, our bodies aren't meant to be empty. We're meant to be full, these vessels of ours. And so I started moving people into different jobs based on their energy gainers and energy gainers. Then I had my team members coming to me going, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Because I wanted them to go home full. And what happened, it was selfish too, because what I knew was if I had a bunch of people that are full, that's attractive. And I don't mean physical attractive, but people who are full are attractive. They attract. And I wanted a group of people in my company who were attractive, who would attract people because they were full, they were happy. And people that are full and happy, and I just had this conversation this morning with Nor, who works for us at Fist Bump, and I was working with her on stuff, and she said, I am so happy. She's been with us about a month. She goes, I get up early and start working, and I've never done this before. Like, I love what I'm doing.
That's great.
And that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Because, she's getting a paycheck from us, but she's getting fulfillment. She's full.
Yeah.
She said, my husband noticed. And that's what life should be about. We should all have jobs that help us be better versions of ourselves for our family and bring home the paycheck.
That's awesome. So looking back over your career and not knowing, look, I know enough now I would say your career's been a raving success, right? Some highs and lows, but the perseverance all the way through the lows and handling the highs and turning them outward and not just turning them inward for your own personal selfish benefit, right? So would you, I want to ask, what would you attribute that to? Is there, of course, the passion and purpose around what you're committed to, but would you say that was a result of your experience, or do you feel like maybe there was a calling? Do you feel like you had a calling? I mean,
Yeah. So,
or did that calling come after experience? Or, it's a tough question, but
yeah.
people ask about calling all the time, right? And we're looking for a framework to understand calling. Any input on that?
Yeah. So I believe, and I've been working on this curriculum that I call rowboat.
Okay.
And the reason I call it rowboat is when you row a boat, you look backwards to go straight.
Yeah.
We got to look back and see what has God allowed us to go through.
Yeah.
And then what do we learn and take from those experiences to go in a straight path forward? What did we gain that we can give away? What did we gain that we can share and help enlighten other people? And so I believe that I was created to be entrepreneurial.
Okay.
I believe my purpose and the refinement of that entrepreneurship came from my experiences, what I learned by looking back on my experiences.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. It does. It may be too early to ask, but do you see another chapter that might be significantly different than the past?
I do. I think I've matured.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, I believe that the service that we offer at Fist Bump is timely.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. It's very much aligned with my personal mission. My hope is that we grow something pretty big, and it's not for the sake of growing something big. Don't get me wrong, I like the financial benefits.
Sure.
I love providing for my family. That's very important to me. But right alongside that is, I think I've learned a lot. I think that I'm always hesitant to say this because I don't want to sound arrogant. That's not my intent. I've learned a lot. I've got a lot of wounds.
Yeah.
I got a lot of scars. But I know that I build good culture. Like my conversation with Noor today, man, I was high as a kite afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, see, there's 5 people on our team right now. We're not big. But listening to her say, I love my job. Thank you so much. This is what my husband said about me. I'm getting up early because I love what I'm doing. It benefits the company, but I know it benefits all of the areas of her life.
Yeah, sure.
And so if, God willing, I have a chance to grow a company, 200, 300, 500, 1,000 employees, sure, they're all going to experience that because that's my passion.
Yeah.
So that's my hope. My hope would be that we could take Fist Bump or another company, or, I get hired into a CEO of a different company or something like that. But that's what I want to bring to the world. And I don't think there's enough of that. And I think the lens that I have is when you treat people like that, more money comes.
Yep.
And so many see they're focused on the bottom line, but they do it by suppressing people.
Well, that's a lagging indicator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're focused completely on the leading indicator, which is taking care of people and taking care of their fulfillment.
And when people are full, they'll take care of your bottom line.
They absolutely will. All right. Last question, almost, unless something else comes up. Would you say that you're consuming your career, or your career is consuming you? You can interpret that any way you want.
I think both at times. I'm still learning. I still let the stress consume me at times.
Sure.
And I get better at it. But, I have an incredible wife.
Yeah.
And I have very healthy, loving kids. And I'm working on just being more grateful for the things that really matter.
Yeah.
And that helps me. But there are still days where the entrepreneur in me wants things faster and bigger and better. And how do I say this better? And, I got to figure out. And, just things like, and everyone goes through this, my social post, I thought it was going to be really good, and it tanked. It tanked, and no one cared. Like,
and it lasted about 20 seconds.
Yeah, how do I do that better? Like, how do I influence more people? And so I do have my moments where it'll consume me, but when I kind of get my brain back on and I kind of go, it's okay.
Yeah. All right.
I'm working hard at it.
All right. So how can people find you? Like, if people want to reach out to you, or how can they learn more about Fist Bump? And
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I mean, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. It's
Brandon
Lee Digital.
Okay. How do you spell Brandon?
Brandon.
Okay. Brandon Lee. Yep.
Of course, getfistbumps.com is our website.
Getfistbumps.com. Okay,
and then funnelamplified.com. You can find me there too.
Great.
Those are the easiest ways.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, great. Brandon, this has been a real treat, I'm telling you.
I hope I served you well. That's. I hope. I mean, I was sitting there talking, going, "Man, is this really what's going to serve your audience well?"
You have served. Not only have you served me well with some fantastic bourbon, but you have served the audience, I believe, extremely well. So, again, beautiful night.
It got a little chilly now.
It did. We need some help with this fire.
I know. We needed somebody to keep stroking the fire there.
That's right. So thank you again, Brandon.
My absolute pleasure.
And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Consuming Careers. If you've enjoyed the show, please click the follow button in your podcast app so you won't miss any of our future episodes. And if you have a minute, write us a review. We truly appreciate hearing from our listeners. And as always, I'm Bruce Smith, and you've been listening to Consuming Careers.
So I started looking for jobs, and I couldn't get hired.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if that comes on the sound, that is one freaked out dog. Gosh. There are sirens going on, but I have never heard that before. Gosh. Okay.
Hey, so those are some of the benefits of
Well, you said grit or quit, man. That dog's got some grit. Whew. Wow.
Okay, make sure we lock the doors.
Yeah, hopefully your sound's not too bad for everybody, but